Hello there. Today I'm going to talk about labor unions. Labor unions represent workers in negotiations with management, and this process is known as collective bargaining. Unions, at least in the United States, generally came into being um, in the early part of the 20th century when there were a lot of abuses by management, difficult working environments, and so forth. Although there are some um, earlier uh, predecessors to unions throughout history. But the American Labor Union, as we know it today, started in the early part of the 20th century. Um, there is sort of the management view towards labor, which is not pro-union. Um, Management view in general is, hey, if the company does well, the workers will be rewarded. Um, the benefit will be shared. Some we use the term trickle down, um, and in some companies that absolutely happens, and other companies not so much. The union view is no, that's not going to happen. It's nothing's going to trickle down unless we force it to trickle down. We force management to give us better terms, better pay, benefits, working conditions. And so there is sort of this disagreement about the need for unions. Uh, that disagreement occurs even among workers. In fact, more recently, Amazon, one of the workers at one of the Amazon locations tried to unionize, um, but has not been able to do that. Um, when there is a union agreement, a contract is negotiated, usually on behalf of the workers. The workers agree to have a union represent them because individually, an individual employee has very little power in a negotiation. So that's what the collective bargaining part comes in. So they work on negotiating a contract on behalf of the workers, and some of the issues, often it's about pay, cost of living adjustments. For instance, there is inflation. The cost of all goods goes up. Whether it's food or gasoline or whatever. Uh, so often in the union contracts there will be adjustments made as prices inflate, rise. So should the compensation. And that, of course, is one point in a contract that might be negotiated. Another one might be job security or seniority. Now, what do we mean by seniority? That would seem to be obvious, but there would be rules. For instance, if there is a layoff, there may be a rule saying senior laborers get laid off last, and often senior laborers or older laborers or longer term laborers or workers tend to cost more because they've received raises and over the time, and they tend to get paid a little bit more. And what has to happen if there's some belt tightening, and that might be part of a contract. Promotion procedures. How does a worker get promoted, and what are the qualifications? What are the and some unions actually have a very strict, or the contract is very strict about how an employee will be promoted. Um, One would think that should be a management decision, and often it is. It sometimes works between. And I do remember somebody. A friend of mine years ago was in a union, and somebody found he had a talent for a particular skill, and they wanted to promote him, and the union said, "No, no, no, you have to promote somebody who's been here longer." So that gets a little bit problematic at times. What are the hiring and firing procedures? Uh, and that can be, you know, an issue. If you want to fire somebody, does it have to go through the union? Does it have to be approved by the union? Um, or and that's obviously subject to negotiation. The work conditions, and this is a major area of importance, and it's in many cases one of the issues that created unions, where back in the first half of the 20th century, working conditions in factories were not necessarily particularly good, and safety things. Some factories were unsafe, and so the union negotiated for better conditions. Breaks so people don't get too weary. Equipment, that sort of thing. Of course, management is also part of this negotiation, and they will try to negotiate what rights they have. Um, and obviously, there will be disagreements. Um, Union negotiations are not usually easy proceedings. Um, what type of shop it is, and the shop refers to the specific location, the local, and there are different types, and I'll get into that in just a moment. The type of shops, um, there was the closed shop, which meant a worker had to be a union member before they joined, beforehand, before they could work. This is now considered illegal. Um, this was a way to restrict people getting into a particular, a particular trade. And that because, again, with the laws of supply and demand, the smaller the supply of labor, the more they could demand for their services. So this is currently illegal. Union shops. This is where a worker must join the union after beginning work, often within 30 days. And I had a friend who joined a union shop. He was it was a printing company, and he was very good at that. He was young, and I think that annoys some of the older union members. And they actually demanded that he be fired. And actually, on his 30th, what would have been his 30th day, he got a phone call early in the morning, and management told him not to come to work. Now, this is an abuse, admittedly, of the system, but these things do occur. Union relations are not usually that harmonious, and that was unfortunate. If he had come to work that day, he would have automatically become a union member. So that was he always regretted answering the phone that day. We have agency shops where a worker isn't required to join the union, but they have to pay a fee. It's a lower fee than the full dues. There's recently been some changes in the law about this, and I'm not quite qualified to speak to the details of that, but but this type of shop does exist. And then there's an open shop where there's a union, but the worker is not required to join the union or pay a fee. This is rare, but it's often it's rare in certain states. In other states, there are what are called right-to-work states, in which the laws have been passed to hurt unions. And this is often, as you probably already are aware, is a very political thing, what unions are allowed to do. And there's been a lot of discussion about strengthening unions. Other people want to weaken unions. There have been abuses by unions, but as there have been abuse by management. But this is a part of life. I actually, in graduate school, took a course in negotiation. And I did fairly well. I believe I got an A in the course. But then at the end of the semester, the professor said, by the way, nothing in this course doesn't really prepare you for union negotiations, which are sort of often bare-knuckled type of affairs. So when labor negotiations fail, where the management and labor union cannot agree, there are still some actions that can be taken. You may be familiar with the picket and the idea of members standing outside the property near the entrance, holding up signs saying unfair, and the XYZ company will not negotiate in good faith, blah, 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 that sort of thing. And it is okay to, it is their right, it is their First Amendment right to picket. What they are not allowed to do is to prevent people from coming or going into and out of the business. However, it can be quite intimidating. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, often other union members will not cross the picket line. They will not deliver or pick up from companies that are involved currently having a labor action of some sort, picket, for instance. And so, most non-union members will perhaps ignore it, but union members tend to support one another. Different unions will tend to support other unions, and so that could be problematic for getting supplies, getting deliveries, uh, and sending out, shipping out product or other things. You can call for boycotts of products, boycotts of doing business with that company. I'm not sure how effective that is. Sort of a much more severe is to have a strike, walking out and saying we will not work, and they have to do this as a union together. The workers all have to do it. If somebody who works at a place of business where their strike is being held against it, anyone who does work is referred to as a scab. Not a very pleasant slang term. And those who do work while a strike is going on, maybe they're union members, are often the subject of retribution of some sort. So you have your general strike, which is just where you walk off. There is also the alternative, which is a sit-down strike, which you come to work, you sit at your desk or your work, but you don't do anything. And then there is the work slowdown, where you still work, but you're not as productive. Sometimes, for example, maybe in many cases, for instance, municipal services are often not allowed to strike by law. For instance, the police are not allowed to walk off the job. However, they could slow down. For instance, maybe they stop writing tickets. Maybe they'll, if they see a crime, they'll intercede, but they're not going to necessarily, write traffic tickets or, do much like that. So these are actions that the members of labor unions can take in a dispute. All designed to pressure management to compromise. Management, they also have actions they can take. They can have a lockout, which means they prevent the workers from coming in. And if they don't come in, they don't get paid. Both strikes and lockouts are expensive to all parties. So certainly if you go out on a strike, no workers who go out on strikes don't expect to be paid. Well, how are they going to support themselves? And that becomes a real difficult situation. Sometimes unions have been known to tap into pension funds, which is not a good thing, to pay the workers. Anyway. So management can keep them out. Also, management can bring in replacement workers, scabs. I do remember there was a baseball strike many years ago, and all the famous baseball players, many of them millionaires, refused to play baseball. And what did many teams do? They just recruited more people to play baseball. And I personally found it kind of fun to watch these games. These are people who are not professional baseball players playing it because, not that they wanted to get rich, but they just wanted to play baseball. And they weren't necessarily the same quality, but that didn't last that long. Eventually, there was a resolution to the strike. Okay. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can email me, or when we're in class, you can bring up questions about this video. Take care.